What is up, my beautiful gemstones? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing the bizarre supernatural murders of Michael Taylor. I am sick and filming multiple videos today, so hopefully I don't have to have too many cuts in this because I'm having a hard time speaking. My throat is on fire, my nose is congested, and I think I have a fever. Anyways, welcome to day 3 of the 7 days of Halloween, and if you haven't seen the previous 2 videos in this series, please go back and watch them after this one. They aren't in any particular order, so you don't have to watch the previous 2 first. It wouldn't be the 7 days of Halloween on this channel if we didn't talk at least a little bit about demonic possession. I'll be covering 2 specific cases later on in this series about demonic possession, but this case is a little bit different, and you'll see why if you just stay with me here. So, since the beginning of time, or at least that's what I would bet a wager on, human beings have been dealing with demonic attachments and demonic possessions. Demonic possessions span across cultures, have happened throughout generations and all across the world since the dawn of time. It's almost an intrinsic part of most religions or cultures, and it's transcended distances, faiths, languages, and cultures. Some people believe that the idea of possession comes from a human being's almost innate sense of trying to figure out why seemingly good people sometimes do the most evil things, or why people like serial killers and deadly dictators exist in the first place. However, most people in this community, at least, believe that possession is real and that we have gained knowledge of it through our own spiritual sense of knowing that something very real is happening all around us beyond what our eyes are normally able to see and or perceive. Many skeptics say that when people are demon possessed that they're actually mentally ill, but you don't have to be religious to believe in demons or other evil entities that can take possession of a human being in their body. They don't have souls, and either they never did or they don't anymore, and that's, I think, one of the main reasons for possession in general. I could go on and on here in this intro just talking about all the different ideas about and aspects of and around demonic possessions and general possessions, but instead I'll let this encounter speak for itself. So let's jump right in. It happened in 1974 when a seemingly normal and very kindly, friendly family man was overcome with evil. Whether it was his own so-called inner demons or actual demons from what we call hell, for lack of a better term, is anyone's guess. It happened in the sleepy and unassuming little town of Ossett, which is near West Yorkshire in England. And this isn't really a place you would ever think could have been the site of a bloody and horrifying murder that had to do with demonic possessions and demons in general, but it is. And we should all know by now that looks can be very deceiving. And when it comes to this kind of stuff, we should never have any sort of preconceived notions. In 1974, Ossett had approximately 17,000 residents, and among those residents were 31-year-old Michael Taylor, his wife Christine, and their 5 young children. They even had a pet poodle. Their neighbors described the Taylor family as cheerful, happy, and very friendly, just your seemingly normal and average family for that time. Michael himself was generally described as kind, helpful, happy-go-lucky, and very mild-mannered by those who knew him well, and even those who knew him just in passing said mostly the same things about his general and overall demeanor. One thing about Michael, though, was that he suffered with severe and chronic back pain that left him not only prone to bouts of serious depression, but also made him unable to find any sort of meaningful or long-term employment. Other than that one seemingly minor thing, though, there was nothing to indicate that there was anything amiss or wrong with the Taylor family or in their household. In fact, neighbors said that the sounds of laughter and happiness were normal and almost constant to hear coming from their home. Ossett's population at that time was mostly very devoutly religious, but not the Taylors. They hadn't ever been particularly interested in being religious or attending church, and though they attended every once in a while, it wasn't the norm for them to do so, and mostly they skipped the services in their community. Possibly due to their lack of interest in the church, one of the Taylors' friends, a woman named Barbara Wardman, introduced the family to a small church group she regularly attended called the Christian Fellowship Group. This fellowship group was led by a woman named Marie Robinson, and she was just 21 years old. Up until this point, Michael hadn't been interested at all in any type of religion or in any religious services, but he started to attend this group regularly and even made some friends in the process with some of the other members. No one saw Michael's newfound interest in the teachings of this group, which were Christian in nature, as a bad thing, and eventually he would go to every single meeting that they held. Each time it said he fell more and more under the spell of its leader, 21-year-old Marie Robinson, who was 10 years younger than he was at the time. However, his interest in Marie soon became inappropriate, as did the amount of time he would spend with her, both inside and out of the groups she held for the fellowship. He was in love with her, and almost anyone with two eyes could see that, including his wife. Eventually, Michael also became a sort of leader in the group and would help Marie Robinson exorcise demons out of people, and he started to speak in tongues while doing so. It became bizarre when Michael and Marie would spend the whole night together multiple times a week, and all they would do would be to stay up all night just making the sign of the cross at one another. And normally, this would happen even more when there was a full moon, because they believed that in making the sign of the cross at one another all night long, they would be warding off all of the evil energy and power that emanated off of the full moon. Yes, it was all very strange, and none thought it stranger or was more upset by it all than Christine, Michael's wife. As all of this was going on, Michael's attitude at home and towards his family changed drastically. He was very sullen and sad, becoming argumentative at the slightest word, and he was even described as being flat out mean and hostile most of the time, and not just towards his wife, but towards their children and even the poodle as well. Immediately, people who were familiar with the situation and those whom Christine took into her confidence believed that the church group was a bad influence on Michael and that it was affecting his attitude in a negative manner, particularly when towards his family. They believed the people in the group, Marie in particular, were having a negative effect on the normally easygoing and peaceful, loving family man. It got to the point where Michael's beliefs became increasingly bizarre and his behavior more uncharacteristically erratic, not to mention how he began to treat his wife so terribly that no one besides the people in the fellowship wanted to be around him anymore. His wife, Christine, was particularly interested and heartbroken by her husband's infatuation with the group's leader, and she decided she wasn't taking it lying down. She decided to confront her husband and accuse him of being unfaithful to her and of having an affair with Marie Robinson. It was at this same time that his behavior would take a terrible turn for the worse, and even Michael himself said that he had felt some sort of evil cast some sort of shadow on him. He felt he was under some sort of evil and possibly demonic influence, and he was admittedly very scared because of it. At some point, he became filled with uncontrollable rage, and he lashed out both physically and verbally at Marie Robinson, and he did this during a fellowship meeting. His anger and fury towards her were so violent that several other members had to get involved and physically restrain him for fear he might really harm someone. Marie Robinson later would testify and say about what happened, quote, "I suddenly glanced at Michael and his whole features changed. He looked almost bestial. He kept looking at me and there was a really wild look in his eyes. I started screaming at him out of fear. I started speaking in tongues. Mike also screamed at me in tongues. I was on the verge of death and I seemed to come to my senses. I knew that only the name of Jesus would save me, and I just started saying over and over again, Jesus. When Christine, heard me calling on the name of Jesus, she started saying it too, and I believe firmly that it was only by calling on his name that I was not killed," end quote. So guys, before we unpack that, I just want to say that it's only here when I realized that his wife was attending these fellowships meetings with Michael, or at least she was there some of the time, because Marie talks about her just then, and also she used a casual name for her, and instead of calling her Christine, she called her Chris, which is informal and not something I think someone who wasn't at least somewhat well acquainted with her would have used. If someone introduces themselves as Christine and you're not at least somewhat acquainted with them, you're going to call them Christine. You're not just going to adopt a nickname. I mean, I could be wrong about that, but it just struck me as odd that all of this would be going down with the wife right there in the room, even if it was only some of the time. I honestly don't trust this woman Marie and didn't from the beginning. And for some reason, I just get the feeling that the bad influence she had on him was not only evil and lower vibrational, but I feel like it could have been purposeful as well. Maybe she was a witch or some sort of rogue Satanist or something, not to say anything negative about Satanists, okay? I don't know much about it. What I mean is someone who literally worships Satan. So maybe Satanist isn't the best word there. She just doesn't seem all innocent in all of this. And how do we know that when she started speaking in tongues, she wasn't egging on whatever entity was possessing or attached to Michael at the time. We don't, and that's the issue. I've been moved to speak in tongues before, and being a Christian, unless it suddenly happens, you aren't supposed to do it outside of the church, even in fellowship groups, unless there's someone there who can interpret what you're saying for the rest of the group. No one seemed to be doing that here, and for all we know, she was further cursing him or really agitating, purposely, the demon or demons inside of him. When asked about it later on, Michael would say that he didn't remember any of the incident, and despite how violent and furious he had been during the episode, the very next day he received full forgiveness from Marie and the whole fellowship group. He also received absolution from the church the group was connected to. Though he had been forgiven, no one would ever forget, and people in the group and church were keeping a closer eye on Michael Taylor than ever before. Michael's sanity continued to spiral downward, and it became very clear to everyone involved and to all who knew him that he was not getting any better, but getting worse. He continued to become more and more confused, argumentative, irate, and depressed as days wore on. It got so bad that several people alerted some of the local ministers to the fact that he might have been under some sort of demonic influence, or worse, that he might already have been in the throes of demonic possession. The local vicar eventually came to the conclusion that Michael did need to undergo an exorcism, but the details are scarce as to why and or how he came to that conclusion. Two ministers named Father Peter Vincent and Reverend Raymond Smith were brought in to administer the exorcism rites. The date and time for the exorcism was set for October 5th, 1974 at St. Thomas Church in the nearby town of Barnsley, and it would commence at exactly midnight. The night finally came, and the ordeal of the exorcism was harrowing. It lasted all throughout the night and well into the morning. As soon as the exorcism began, Michael is said to have started convulsing, as well as having major fits of scratching, screaming at the top of his lungs, and even biting both the priests and himself. Because of the fits of rage and violence he had been displaying, the ministers felt the need to tie him to the floor so that he couldn't hurt himself and would no longer be a danger to the other people in the room. During the course of the next 8 hours, Michael Taylor was doused with holy water, forced to confess his deepest and darkest sins, and the whole time he was growling and snapping his teeth at the two men trying to save his life and his soul. He would lunge at and attack anyone and everyone who came near him during this time, and it was all a very, very scary situation for everyone involved. The priests in charge of this exorcism said that Michael had a total of 40 demons possessing his body, and they included those representing incest, lewdness, heresy, blasphemy, bestiality, masochism, and carnal knowledge, whatever that means. The demons didn't leave quietly or easily and basically had to be dragged out of Michael Taylor kicking and screaming. I think that's usually the case. By 8 in the morning on the 6th of October, everyone was absolutely exhausted. The priests couldn't continue without getting some rest, and amazingly, this still blows my mind every time I read it or hear it. They decided that they would finish the exorcism at a later time once they had the chance to rest and recuperate a little bit to gather their strength to get the rest of the demons, the remaining demons, out of Michael's body. The priests said that the demons of anger, insanity, and murder still very much resided in Michael, and yet they sent him home while they rested, recuperated, and regrouped. They sent this man, who allegedly had demons of insanity, anger, and murder, home with his wife, their 5 kids, and their poodle, knowingly. Let that sink in for a moment. One of the witnesses to the exorcism, a woman named Margaret Smith, wife of minister and exorcist Raymond Smith, said that she had received a warning in her mind that she had believed had been given to her by God, saying that the demon of murder would come out and kill Christine if Michael were to be allowed to return home. She begged her husband and his partner to continue with the exorcism right then, or to at the very least not allow Michael to leave the church until all of the demons were successfully removed from his being. They didn't listen to her, and instead they told Michael and Christine to go home and get some rest and to meet them back there the next day so that they could finish his exorcism. Whether or not you believe in demonic possession, or whether or not Michael Taylor was in fact possessed by demons, surely you'll see that what happened next was in fact evil and insanity in play at its finest moment. At around 10 in the morning, so about 2 hours after they had left the church and the exorcism, Michael Taylor brutally murdered his wife, Christine. What I am about to describe to you all is quite gruesome and could be triggering to some of you, so there's your trigger warning. Skip ahead a bit or cover your ears because it's about to get bad. Michael killed Christine by strangling her with his bare hands, but that wasn't all. He gouged out her eyes, ripped out her tongue, and in a gruesome and macabre display of insanity and violence, he ripped off most of her face with his bare hands, like he ripped the skin from the bones. He then grabbed the family's dog, the poodle, whose name we still don't know, and killed it too. He absolutely slaughtered this poor dog, ripping and tearing at it limb from limb. Michael then left the house without even trying to cover up what he did or clean himself up at all, and he walked out of his house and into the street, stark naked and covered from head to toe in the blood of his wife and their poodle. He was wandering aimlessly around the streets of his town and yelling maniacally, "It's the blood of Satan!" over and over and over again very loudly. A police car, which just happened to be driving by, saw Michael in this state and of course pulled over to see what the hell was going on with him. Not too long after finding Michael, they found the brutally mutilated corpses of his dog and of his wife. They were both found in pools of their own blood on the floor of the home. Obviously, the normally quiet and peaceful town was shocked and appalled at the brutal murders and by the sensational backstory that was slowly trickling out about demonic possession and the involvement of the church with an unfinished exorcism to top it all off. It was all so brutal and bizarre that the prosecution barrister, or just the prosecution if you're an American, included in his opening statements and told the jury that they were about to, quote, witness evidence that will make it hard to believe you are not back in the Middle Ages, end quote. The prosecutor's name was Jeffrey Baker, QC. I think QC stands for Queen's Court, though I have no idea what that means. Michael Taylor took the stand in his own defense and claimed to have no knowledge or recollection of the murders, and he was adamant that he had been under the influence of supernatural forces that made him kill his wife and their dog. He also said that he had been suspicious that his wife had also been possessed by demons. During the trial, it came out that the Christian Fellowship Group was more like a fanatical cult than an actual Christian fellowship group. It was believed that the group had taken control of Michael's mind and had influenced him with potent indoctrination. They were said to have used very strong mind control tactics, and the things they did and how they carried them out only exacerbated Michael's already very weak psyche and any mental issues he may have been dealing with at the time, including the depression he sometimes sank into because of his chronic back pain and also due to his inability to find permanent, long-term, and gainful employment to support his family. At one point, the group as a whole was described as, quote, neurotics feeding neurosis to another neurotic, end quote. The defense leveled blame at the exorcism itself and those who helped carry it out. The prosecution claimed that the actual rituals of the exorcism fed off of the strange beliefs, warped ideas/ideals, and fanatical religious fervor he had inherited from the group. They stated that the group was a negative influence on Michael and that everything they were feeding him mentally and emotionally took a toll on his already very weakened mental and emotional state. So the prosecution and the defense agreed that the fellowship was a fanatical cult, allegedly, and they agreed that the things that they were doing, discussing, talking about their overall beliefs in general, that they were somewhat indoctrinating Michael with, were detrimental to his physical, emotional, spiritual, psychical, even welfare and health. They said that Michael was a sleep-deprived, emotionally and mentally disturbed man already, as it was, and they were indoctrinating him with ideas that pushed him over the edge of madness and into the realm of murder. One barrister, a man called Mr. Ognell, QC, made a statement during the trial that basically summed up how most people involved in the case felt about the church's responsibility in the crime and the ways in which it was, at least partially, to blame. He said, quote, I am aware that it is generally regarded as improper for an advocate to express any personal feeling or opinion about the case in which he is engaged. I am afraid I find it quite impossible to observe such constraints in this case. Let those who are truly responsible for this killing stand up. We submit that Taylor is a mere cipher. The real guilt lies elsewhere. Religion is the key. Those who have been referred to in evidence, and those clerics in particular, should be with him in spirit now in this building, and each day he is incarcerated in Broadmoor, and not least on the day he must endure the bitter reunion with his 5 motherless children, end quote. That's pretty powerful stuff. At the end of it all, Michael Taylor was found not guilty on the grounds of insanity, and he was deemed both legally and clinically insane, which meant his sentence would be carried out at Broadmoor Secure Hospital for the criminally insane. He served 2 years of his sentence there at that hospital, and then another 2 years were served right after that at the Bradford Royal Infirmary, which just by the name of it sounds like another hospital. Maybe one was maximum and one was minimum, I'm not really sure. The aftermath of this trial included crazy amounts of public outrage and outcry about the exorcisms and the use of exorcisms within the church overall. It was all so strange and bizarre, and common people had a hard time understanding and wrapping their heads around what had actually took place here. A woman and her dog were dead, 5 children were basically orphaned, and the whole thing didn't make a lot of sense to people who weren't familiar with and or involved in the paranormal community, which back in the 70s was most of the population. It wasn't like it is today, where people show such an interest and belief in these types of things, and where we have whole communities springing up around the paranormal and supernatural. And in fact, the public was so outraged that this ended up being the very last recorded exorcism ever carried out by the Anglican Church. Despite this, though, in the years following the trial, the chief priest who had been in charge of the exorcism of Michael Taylor, Father Peter Vincent, continued to adamantly defend his and the church's position that Michael was indeed possessed by demonic forces and entities, and that it had been an authenticated case. While he was sorry for what Michael had ended up doing to his wife and his family, he stood by his and the church's decision about the exorcism. At the end of the day, I don't really understand why they ever let this man go home with his wife when they knew the demon of murder and another demon, I believe one of rage, were still inhabiting his body. Not to mention, guys, they were warned beforehand by Raymond's wife not to allow him to go home, and I honestly just cannot wrap my head around why they didn't keep him at the church and find qualified and experienced people to keep track of and an eye on him so he couldn't get away until the entire exorcism was completed, until all of the demons were sent back to wherever they came from. For me, it had to be one of two things. Either they were so exhausted that they were overpowered mentally without even realizing it in order to let him go to do what he did, or they wholeheartedly didn't believe in what they were doing. Think about it. If you're a priest who's conducted thousands of exorcisms in the past, and you know exactly the consequences of what you're dealing with and all of the innate and inner knowledge about the true nature of demonic possessions and demons and how imminent the danger was, why else would you make a decision to do what these priests ended up doing? Let me know your thoughts about that in the comments, actually. Father Peter Vincent talks about the misplaced blame that was aimed at him and the church during the trial, and he said in part, quote, "I am quite convinced God will bring good out of this in his own way, however tragic it was at the time. If the psychiatrist said this crime would not have been committed but for the exorcism, that seems a rather strange thing to say. People will always draw their own conclusions," end quote. Michael continued displaying bizarre behavior even after the trial and after carrying out the sentence imposed upon him. He was never the same again, meaning the same as he had been when he first met Marie Robinson in her fellowship group. He fell into a deep depression, and throughout the years he attempted to take his own life at least 4 times. In July of 2005, Michael Taylor, who at this point was still most well known for the murders, the exorcism, and the trial as a result of them, and I keep saying murders because he did kill that poor poodle, and who knows who else he would have gone after had he not made himself so obvious and the police didn't happen to come upon him that day. He ended up being arrested for harassing in some way an underage female, and I think it was in a sexual way, I'm not sure. During the trial for that charge, nothing about his past crimes was ever mentioned, and it had no bearing on that trial or the sentencing afterwards. It was said he showed a low to medium risk of reoffending, and plus his lack of any previous crimes of this same nature made it also that he was only given 3 years of community service and was made to undergo further psychiatric treatment. Shouldn't he have been doing that anyway? I mean, considering what he had done in the first place, shouldn't he have already been undergoing psychiatric treatment? This is so confusing, but I wonder if it's just because we're dealing with a country whose laws are so different from the laws in my country, or if someone really did drop a ball here. So what happened? I honestly don't know, but one of the things I concluded while reviewing all of this information I could find about the case was that the fellowship more than likely was some sort of cult, and that perhaps the woman running it was some sort of witch. And I don't mean like most of us witches here in this community are. The speaking in tongues with seemingly no one around to interpret is what threw me off very much and got me thinking that perhaps they were conjuring up something evil the whole time and knew exactly what they were doing and who they were going to use as their pawn for the devil. With Christine and the poor poor poodle being sacrifices. I wonder too what happened to Marie Robinson, because I believe she was the puppet master in this whole situation and had been pulling the strings from the very beginning. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed hanging out with me, if you're enjoying the 7 days of Halloween that I put so much extra work and time into. Spread the love by sharing this video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure your notification bell is on. Like, go and check and make sure. In the description box, you will find important links, ways to donate to the channel. If you don't donate, I do not make hardly any money. I think every pre-recorded video like this earns me anywhere from 36 to 64 cents per month. All right. And I do for a month. So if you guys can help in any way, PayPal, Cash App, my Amazon wish list gift link, if you can't donate but want to send me a little gift to thank me or just because, that will be in the description box. Also, if you have your own encounters with the supernatural, paranormal, otherworldly, extraterrestrial, if you want to correspond with me for any reason, if you have any questions, if you want to book sessions with me, book readings with me through video chat or just general remotes, if you want to purchase items from me, I make spiritual helper boxes. I do all kinds of moon water and manifestation sprays and bath salts and just all kinds of things. Reach out if you have questions, and if I can help you, I will. GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com for any and all correspondence. This video and most of what I do here on this channel is sponsored by my members: Ghost Dragon ZW, Wendy Williams, Nutslap, Val SWPA, KC, Blue Crossroads, Hurricane Holly, Gary Reed, Slow Motion, Life with Bobby, Jared Crazy Indian, Mama Cindy Lee, Chris Jarvis, Let the Monsters In with Ryan Tremblay, Kelly Lewis, Multifaceted Jewels, The Bat Mom, Black Dragon, Diane Boss, Alexander Unverhall, Cheeky Kiki, Divine Empathic Tarot, Vixen Doe, Heather B, Aunt Edna, and Paranormal Pixie, in no particular order. That's just the order they're in on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much to my members. If you would like to become a member, please look in the description box for information about that, or reach out through email. I believe there's some button you can hit. It's a super simple process, particularly if you are involved in, interested in my Friday night live intuitive oracle stream, because I've made some changes over there that greatly benefit the members of my channel. Also, if you become a patron and pledge $20 a month or more, you will automatically receive every single month a personal intuitive oracle reading from me as a thank you, because I don't have much Patreon content up yet. The links to all of my books, Kindle, paperback, and Audible versions, you can find in the description box, but I have 10 or 11 books out, and that's a lot of links. So if I missed one, if you're looking for a particular link to a particular book that I've written, please go on Amazon, type in Gemma Jade Books, and you will find my whole collection. If you've purchased and read any of my books in any format, please go to Amazon and leave a 5-star review. In order to put 5 stars, I believe you also have to leave a written review. You could just write great book, amazing book, Gemma's amazing, something like that. It really does help keep my book out there and pushed forward, and it'll only take you 2 to 5 seconds, and it's free. Guys, if you're over on TikTok, check me out, GemmaJadeYT. I'm trying to get 1,000 followers over there to be able to do more with intuitive oracle, mediumship readings, doing it all live, possibly even some nighttime ASMR. All right, so hit me up on TikTok, Instagram. I'm on there for Beyond the Fray Publishing, just for my book stuff, but I am learning how to use it so I could put more content out for you guys. And of course, Facebook, GemmaJade, GemmaJadeYT are the 2 handles that I use. So Facebook is GemmaJade, and I believe Instagram and TikTok are GemmaJadeYT. Support the YouTube shorts. They bring in more money than anything except donations here on this channel. And lately they're bringing in more than the donations. Remember, if you donate anything through YouTube and don't use PayPal or Cash App, you are giving YouTube 49% of your donation. Be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. If nobody told you today, you got this. You can do anything you put your mind to, because abundance is your birthright. I believe in you. I got your back. Always go in grace. Smile at a stranger. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.